I'm starting it now.
Okay.
There you go.
Gord, I don't have the option.
We're live now. Live now, Scott.
I understand.
I was just on the phone with Paul. I think he said he thinks he's in now, but I don't see him in yet.
I think he was, and then he disappeared.
Sorry, so if you guys were talking to me, I was on the phone with him and I had my mic muted. My apologies. We could get started, I guess, without him. If that's what we want to do. We're live right now, so maybe we'll do that. And when he joins, he can take over. So just give me 1 second here, please. All right, so we'll get started we'll call the meeting to order at 7:08 p.m. And our first order at 1.2 is O Canada by Oakbank Elementary School. Scott, do we have that ready to go?
I have it queued up. Give me 1 moment. I'll do this. Oops. Sorry, 1 moment. All right, please stand if you are able. Oh, now I'm having audio difficulties. Apologies, 1 second.
Thank you, Scott. Next is our treaty acknowledgement. Was there a trustee who was going to be reading the treaty acknowledgement? If not, I can do it. I'll do it. We acknowledge the traditional land upon which Sunrise School Division resides as Treaty 1 territory. We honor our partnership with Canada's original peoples and respect the gifts of Indigenous history, culture, and language. We commit to moving forward in partnership with our communities in a spirit of collaboration and reconciliation. So moving to 2.0, adoption of the agenda, 2.1. There's a resolution, be it resolved that the board approve the agenda. So I need a mover and a seconder.
I'll move it, Russ.
Trustee Reed moves.
I'll second it.
Trustee Nichols seconds. Ms. Bonato, are we able to do a voting online here without with a trustee missing?
No, unfortunately, you have to do a manual vote.
Okay, so we'll do a manual vote. We'll go round table. Trustee Rowland.
Hi. I had a question actually about the agenda, today's agenda, and because I'm in between screens, it was about the attachment for our public participation in budget. And I was just wanted to be clear that having that submission as part of our agenda, are we planning on attaching all submissions till our closing date in March on our agenda? Like, is that going to be our new process, publicly posting submissions for agenda, or sorry, for budget consultation?
I would suggest we put them somewhere on ESB, Dan, not necessarily under the meeting agenda. We have a library set up that may be the better place for it, but I think that's something we could discuss as a board and decide where the best place for those to live. I'd like to put them all in one place just so they're easily accessible to the trustees, but I'm not sure on the agenda is where it may be. You know, tonight's obviously a bit of a different meeting in the sense that accepting public input is a little more challenging in a virtual environment. So, you know, we have put the emails we've got so far.
So we have attached all the emails that we've received, did you say?
I believe so. I'll double check what's in there.
And I just wanted to be sure with our process that we should be attaching that with our agenda item. I'm not saying that, you know, we certainly need to address all of our submissions, and we need to review them and discuss them in our budget our budget deliberations. But just wasn't sure if that it was an item to be explicitly attached in our agenda like that. And if we're going to do it today, are we going to do that for every email till submission deadline in March? I just wanted to be sure we were following our policies and protocol.
Yeah, we have not historically done that.
Can I ask for it to be removed then and put in our file for budget discussion?
Yep, certainly.
So then just to, is there any opposition to having that item removed from the agenda? I'll give the trustees a few seconds. Mr. Nicol?
Well, you can't remove it because it's a public meeting. We can't have a public meeting unless it's on the agenda. So we can't remove the public meeting. I don't know what one you're doing. Are you doing 8.2? You can't remove that because we have a public meeting. The submissions that come after, what we've done always in the past, whenever there was a public meeting, when the public came in there and talked about everything that was said in that meeting is part of the meeting. Any submission after the meeting is over. It's got nothing to do with that meeting, so it's not going to be an agenda. It's not going to be part of the meeting because it was after the meeting took place. So what I'm saying, it's got to be on.
It didn't happen at this meeting. It happened last week. So I'm just saying.
Well, I'm not quite sure. Are you talking about 4.1? Are you talking about 8.2? I'm not quite sure what you are asking to be removed.
Trustee Rowland?
Sorry, I was just trying to refer to the section on my other screen. It's the attachment in our submissions. I just was going to try and check the section. Do you have that section handy, Jared? Or I can go to my other screen.
The public, I believe, is 8.2.
It's 8.2, and there's two items, and there's two items attached to it.
Correct.
So did Diane, Trustee Rowland, did you have a specific something that you wanted taken off the minutes or off the agenda?
I was just like the attachments to be removed and to be included in our ESB folder of budget submissions from the public and to be discussed in our budget meetings and not be part of the formal agenda today. I would like our submissions that come today and people who speak on video or whatnot would be part of our record for today, but other submissions that would come after today, came last week, and come until our deadline, I believe in March, not be recorded throughout that time period on agendas. It should be part of our budget discussion, but not be attached to the agenda.
I understand that. And Stacey, can you correct me if I'm wrong, but just because it's an attachment on the agenda that is not necessarily public until we make it public, is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
So it's not public at this moment, and we don't need to make it public. It's an agenda item for the.
Okay, so
That is what
Trustee
I'm
Rowland-
requesting.
Okay, so you're requesting that, so you're not wanting anything removed from the agenda then, Trustee Rowland?
I guess the right way to say is I do not want that part of that to become public. Those attachments. Scott and Stacey are saying those attachments are currently not public until the agenda is adopted. So I would like that to remain that way. And I think that all submissions should be accepted and dealt with uniform way, which is not to attach them as part of our agenda like this. Because actually, if we do it, that's fine, but every other submission that comes forward to the board in an email between today and our deadline for submission, then I feel should be attached and brought as public knowledge at every board meeting. So that's just whatever we do with this one, I feel it needs to be done with every other submission that comes. And I just want to be uniform on that, so.
Yep, for sure. Thank you, Trustee Rowland. Secretary Treasurer Carlton, in the past, the last couple of years, what have we done with respect to input from the budget consultation meeting? I know last year's meeting, correct me if I'm wrong, we posted the individuals' names who spoke and had questions for the board or comments for the board. We noted who spoke. And then we provided a link to the live video. Now, because this was a submission, what have we done in the past regarding written submissions?
Yeah, again, a written submission we have not shared, only with trustees. We haven't made them public. Again, it's a bit of a different environment in a pandemic and a virtual meeting. The public was offered options on how to present either in person or in writing. So anything I received up to tonight's meeting, as Dawn said, my intention was to include on the meeting agenda. Obviously, anything after this point wouldn't be part of the meeting for public input. But I'm happy to do whatever the board wishes.
Okay, so Trustee Rowland, I'll go back to you then. Are you fine leaving it, or did you want to stand and have it?
Well, if you could ask the other trustees how they feel about having that remain and to deal with all future submissions, or what their opinion is. I'd like to hear.
Okay, so
I'll go with the majority. That's fine.
Yeah, Trustee Rowland has asked that those items don't be made public, and Secretary Treasurer Carlton has confirmed that in the past we haven't made written submissions public. So if there's any opposition to having those items remain out of public, I'm asking for trustees to raise their hand and come forward. If not, we'll move on.
Okay. Okay, I don't know how to raise my hand. Sometimes it doesn't show here, but I think we should, some of that has, because of the pandemic, because they might come and make a presentation and they want it to be public, and now they're doing email won't be public. So I think what we should be doing is ask those people that gave us written submissions whether they want it to be public or not. And then we should have something in the library for the public to see. I don't think we are hiding anything. So if the person, if there was if they could have come and made the submission, then it would have been public. But because they may not either know how to use Teams, they may not be able to have a computer at home that is available. But if they do the email, I think that we should, and if they want to be public, I think we should make it public.
Okay. So you know what, I'm gonna have to go to each trustee here because I don't have a clear direction as to where we want to go with this. So, Trustee Roland, I know you want to have it removed and not be public. Trustee Reed.
Okay. We're talking about the attachments in 8.2, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
I have no objection to moving them out of there. Yeah, I don't know. I sort of like you. I'm not so sure why, but it doesn't bother me to have them out of there.
Okay. Trustee Inslee.
Is there only one submission from the public then? Am I missing something?
No, that's
Yeah,
correct.
so Karen, I think we're Karen, I think we're gonna, or Trustee Inslee, my apologies. I think we're gonna stick to just getting through this piece here. So with regards to the written submission that we do have as an attachment to 8.2, Trustee Roland suggesting that we remove it from the minutes. So where do you stand on that?
I mean, I'm to the public if there's somebody questions about it going public, but I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence with it. So ask the rest of the board, because like if I'm in the minority, then take it out. Then take it out.
So I need an answer. I don't know how else we're gonna make a decision as a board here.
Take it out.
Trustee Nicol, you want to leave it in?
Well, yes, because if we take this out, then we can't, any of the emails that come back later on, we cannot put in because she mentioned there was a public, the budget consultation. So we've got to decide, are we going to, anybody that gives us email, are we as a board going to, and are we going to share that with the public or aren't we going to share with the public? It's not only this letter, it's all the emails. That's the question. Are we going to be transparent and share all emails, or are we just going to keep all the emails quiet?
Okay. Trustee Harris?
I think we should be getting permission from the person who is submitting it, asking if they want their submission to be public or not. If people had arrived to give us a presentation tonight in a non-COVID area, that's they made that decision to make it public. Let's give the people who are submitting emails the opportunity to have their submission public.
Yeah.
Okay, Trustee Duma.
I also agree that we need to be clear with people as to what we're doing with their submission when it comes in. So asking their permission is okay as to whether it should be put in the publicly out there. But I think there should be something in the agenda that just says received, that there was a public consultation item received within it, recognize that we've received the correspondence, and I think that's what should be in the agenda, not the attachment, unless we ask the permission.
Thank you, Trustee Duma. Trustee Barry?
Okay. Yeah, I'm okay with just stating we receive it and just go from there.
Thank you, Trustee Barry. So for myself, I would like to have the permission from those individuals as well, and then just make a mention, as Trustee Duma said, that we've received it. We do have our chair back in the meeting now, I believe. So Chair Magnon, I don't know how much of this conversation you were able to hear. But what's your position? And then at that point in time, I think maybe I'll turn the meeting back over to you.
Thanks, Jared, for doing that. My apologies. My wife was on a Teams meeting with ArtSpeak, and it seemed like our two teams meetings were having difficulty with each other, or me getting back on. So what I do think is that we should ask permission for someone to submit something publicly. When somebody submits something to us with regard to budget information to put it on ESB, we should get permission for them to do that.
Okay, so Trustee Magnan, or sorry, Mr. Chairman, just to let you know, so we're at, the majority of the board would like to seek permission from the individuals and then just make a notation that we've received that documentation. So I think that's the direction that we'll head. So I don't know what kind of changes Ms. Bonato needs to make, but that's kind of where we'll go from this point forward.
So Jared, were we just on 4.1 public budget presentations?
No, we weren't on 4.1, Mr. Chairman. We were on adopting the agenda, 2.0.
Okay, so do we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
The motion was on the floor, and I believe Trustee Reed, I can't even remember now who, but the motion was on the floor already, yes.
It was Trustee Reed and myself.
Okay, so Dawn, are we ready to move forward with that voting on the motion to adopt the agenda?
I believe we are.
You need to
All right.
remove number 8.7.
The SEO line 8.7.
Yes.
So Stacy, have you done that?
Yes, it's just going to take a minute to update on the screen.
Okay, so it will be removed and we'll move forward with it. So we're okay to go ahead and vote? All right, hearing none. Stacy, we'll vote on this.
Yes, it can now be voted electronically, so I'm going to put it through right away once you call it.
Go ahead and we'll vote now, Stacy. Stacy, has the voting showed up for us?
Sorry, it's just going to take a minute because I had to try and remove
Yeah, no
something
worries.
mid-meeting. So sorry, it'll be right there.
I just want to know if I've joined the meeting properly.
It should be on your screens now.
Thanks, Stacy. So we're just waiting on two trustees.
Are the votes up there now?
Yes, they are. So Russ, it looks like you haven't joined because you're the only one that hasn't voted. You need to join the meeting.
Sorry, I thought I did. I'll abstain.
All right, so we've got 7 in favor, 1 opposed, and one abstained. So it's passed. Thank you for that. And thanks, Jared, for pinch hitting there. Chair's comments, I'm just going to leave it for now to move on. Share a story. Does anybody want to share a story?
Just, you know what, Paul, I think maybe we should note that if there's any questions to be emailed to scarlton@sunrisesd.ca.
So any questions that are related to the agenda, thank you, Trustee Paczewski. Send the questions to scarlton@sunrisesd.ca. Thank you. Anyone want to share a story? Anyone want to share a story? Okay, we'll move on. Board delegation, public budget presentations and feedback. Scott, you're going to take this over?
Thanks, Paul. Just to let the board know, we did request again, a bit of a unique circumstance this year, holding our public consultation virtually on Teams. The intent of this, I have a really quick, I try to get through as quickly as possible, like a 5-minute presentation, and then the intent is generally to have public in the audience to have an opportunity to speak to the board about what perhaps their priorities should be or what our priorities should be as we work through the budget process. Again, living in a virtual world now, we did send out invitations to a lot of associations that we've had presentations from the past. Unfortunately, didn't have anybody come forward wishing to present today. So I'll still zip through, unless there's some argument against it. I'll zip through my presentation very quickly, and then perhaps for the purpose of the people watching at home, and then perhaps we can move forward.
That's a good idea, Scott. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll go through quickly welcome and introductions. The purpose of this meeting, public consultation and input. Go through a little bit about the situation that the Sunrise School Division is in now, what our needs may be, and then give an opportunity, obviously would give an opportunity generally for stakeholder feedback. Our vision statement as a division is that every student will have the opportunity to experience the joy of learning in the Sunrise School Division in order to be better prepared for the future with the knowledge, skills, and values to achieve their own personal goals. We're a school board made up of 9 trustees. Our chair, Mr. Paul Magnon, Vice Chair Jared Pachkowski, sorry, Jared. From Ward 1, Whitemouth, Mr. Don Nicol. From Ward 2, the Beausejour area, Robin Harris. Ward 3, Diane Rowland. Ward 4, Springfield Oakbank area, we have 2 trustees, Diane Duma and Karen Inslee. Ward 5, Art Berry, and Ward 8, Lactamani, Russ Reed. All with us this evening. We also have our senior admin team, Kathy Timko, our fearless leader and superintendent, myself, the secretary treasurer, and Jackie Julian, who's our assistant superintendent of learning and student services. The board has identified in our strategic planning several priorities, particularly in literacy and numeracy. We work hard as a division to improve literacy and numeracy results at the kindergarten to grade 3 level so that students can be successful lifelong learners, obviously the key goal of us as a school division. We worked hard on communication, enhancing communication to instill public confidence for increased clarity and consistency among the division, community, staff, parents, and students. The purpose for doing things like this meeting tonight, again, obviously in the current pandemic environment we find ourselves in, it becomes more challenging to get that input from the public. This meeting will be recorded though, and obviously available on our website, so we will go through the process and still invite stakeholder feedback afterwards. Continuing on with board priorities, the third priority of the board is to offer quality learning opportunities and experiences, enhanced, increased, and innovative learning opportunities for students. We want to be flexible and move with the times. Plan, which kind of guides everything we do on a day-to-day basis in schools, is that all staff in Sunrise will use data triangulation, responsive teaching practices, and class profiles to inform instruction in the areas of literacy, numeracy, languages, and active learning. We try to be responsive, very responsive to student needs and class profiles to understand what our students are looking for in terms of instruction. On map, as you can see, I speak to this often, but our division is one of the largest geographically in the province of Manitoba, spanning from the south end, obviously around Winnipeg up to the Powerview Oakbank area and down east, or Powerview Lactamani area, pardon me, down east to Whitemouth and then Reynolds. Create significant challenges for us as a division. Operational facts. As of this fall, September 30th, we had 4,762 students enrolled. We operate 13 public schools, 6 colony schools, and 4 adult learning centers. We operate in about 860,000 square foot of buildings. Our geographic area, 7,180 square kilometers. Our buses, our 92 bus routes, travel about 2.7 million kilometers a year. What we're trying to do is sort of give, again, with a very brief presentation, an idea to stakeholders and taxpayers, ratepayers of our current financial environment, look for ideas from stakeholders. The next steps, obviously, is an intense process we go through with the board over the course of a couple of months, looking at and drafting a budget that's based on provincial funding announcements and some other things that is required to be submitted to the province in March. Before we submit and approve or submit the budget to the province, we will present that draft budget to the public again for a second set of eyes and feedback on the 23rd of February 2021. Again, today the goal was to hear what the public's priorities may be, which would help inform the board and management in terms of the budgeting process. Bit of an idea, this is our 1920 actual costs on what Sunrise School Division spends. The column on the left you'll see is a breakdown of what's called Manitoba Frame, Financial Reporting and Accounting in Manitoba Education, which is really a tool that's used by all divisions to enable comparison on spending. So we spend about $35 million, about half of our budget, on regular instruction. We spend $13 million on student support, almost $1 million on adult learning, a little bit of money, $235,000 on community education and services, $2 million of our budget goes to administration, $1.5 million to instructional and other support services that supports teaching in the classrooms, $4.5 million on transportation, $6.2 million on operations and maintenance, $5.7 million on fiscal and capital, which includes depreciation on our facilities, interest on any debt that we have, and things like that. Also, one of the biggest ones there is payroll tax, provincial payroll tax, and then a small amount of money on some other issues as well. In terms of what we're actually spending those dollars on, as you can see here, I won't go through them all, but the bulk of our costs, just over $50 million, are incurred for salaries. You know, everywhere from the in-class teaching to support staff, all across the division to support that student learning. Our current financial situation, last year our budget was in the neighborhood of $67.5 million, which represented an increase of about 1.5 from the year before. Our provincial funding is about $36 million. Obviously, what interests most stakeholders in the area is that we make up the difference in our expenses and our provincial funding in municipal education taxes. Our provincial funding actually went up slightly last year, just $0.1 million. Our mill rate in 2019, we're happy to say, went down from 2018. It was 13.725, and projecting the mill rate for this year is what we're working through and the final goal of the budget process. So that number will be presented on the 23rd of February. A little bit of a comparison. Sunrise School Division spends a bit more than the average across the province in terms of educating kids. I have to say the bulk of that difference is made up in transportation. I've mentioned our geographic area and some of the challenges we face in terms of transportation. We do put a priority on focusing our resources into the classrooms. You'll see our pupil to educator ratio is a little bit lower than what the provincial average is. We feel that's the best place to put our resources is in classrooms. We're fortunate in this division in that our assessment per resident pupil, which is essentially property values across the division, is about 20% higher than the provincial average. And our mill rate is, again, a little bit higher, the bulk of that on some of the challenges we face in terms of transportation and other things related to our geography. Here's a quick look at our enrollment over the years. The interesting thing is if you look at September 2010 to September 2020, there's been some up and down changes in there, but we have a difference of 2 students over 10 years. So pretty consistent enrollment in our division over the last 10 years. Challenges, always challenged in finding appropriate funding to take on initiatives that are not necessarily part of our day-to-day delivery of education. As I mentioned, our enrollment fluctuations can create challenges. I mentioned over 10 years it's been pretty static, but we do have annual ups and downs, so that can create some issues from year to year. Across the board, we experience inflation like everybody else. We have increasing operating costs for materials, supply, and services. Specifically this year, some things have changed legislatively that leads us to believe we're going to be facing probably a little bit more of an uncertain labor market going forward. And, we're budgeting for a fiscal year that starts in July of 2021, which is about 7 months away. We're certainly facing the unknown when it comes to COVID and whether or not we'll still be in this environment in July of this year. So that creates challenges for us in budgeting as well. So that's my quick and dirty presentation. At this point, we'd obviously open the floor up to public input. We unfortunately don't have people on the line prepared to present tonight, but I do invite anybody watching or who is viewing this on a pardon me, video after the fact to please feel free to submit written feedback on our budget process, either by email. We have a special email account set up, budget@sunrisesd.ca, or by mail, and you can also find our contact information obviously on the website. So that would be it for me, Paul.
Thanks, Scott. Scott, one of the things also when I sent information home to all of our employees and parents, I also said is there was 3 ways. One was tonight, one was certainly an email to budget@sunrisesd.ca, and they had up until March, I believe somewhere at the beginning of March. And I also said the third way that people can go ahead and do that is by contacting any one of the trustees. Sure. And the trustees' information is on our website. So if you have some budget feedback that you want to give to us, is that you can do it any one of those 3 ways. So just for the record, again, I just wanted to make sure that people still have that opportunity to do that.
Yeah, we are required obviously to submit an approved budget to the province, Paul, by the end of March, as you know. So just so the public knows, we are happy. It won't be finalized until we have 2 meetings in March, the 2nd and the 16th. So one of those meetings we will look to approve the budget. So we're certainly happy to take feedback right up until that point.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it. Anybody want to comment? I'll leave it open for a minute to Scott.
Yes.
Go ahead, Don.
There's a couple of things. When you presented it, what I have in when I made the attachment and what you presented, I had bus routes 90 and you had bus routes 92 on your slide. So I'm just wondering which is the correct one. Is it bus routes 90 or is it 92?
Yeah,
what you showed on.
Yeah, I did a quick revision on that, Don. Sorry, I must not have uploaded the updated. We have actually 92 bus routes. We have 90 buses and drivers. We have two drivers that do a double route. They drop off children and then return for a second route. So technically we have 92 routes. We have 90 drivers and buses that do those routes.
Okay. And the next one, when it says current financial situation 2020/21, I think there's a typo. It's not 2019 mill rate. It should be 2020 mill rate, and the projected not 2020 should say 2021.
Yeah, again, that might be an adjustment that I didn't update.
I assume that's just a typo.
Yeah, that's got to be a typo, Don. Appreciate that.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Scott, and thanks, Don. And we'll move on. Thanks for putting that together, Scott. And it is unfortunate, certainly with COVID, that we didn't have information and feedback. We've always had it from the public. Hopefully we'll get that as soon as possible. So let's move on to 5.1, minutes of November the 3rd. One of the questions that we have is, before we make a motion of those minutes, we had a commentary from someone in the minutes, and I think one of the things that we're all talking about is we do want to make our minutes as accurate as possible, and certainly we want, if someone's going to email us information, we want to, and email us questions, is that we will list questions in minutes from what's moving forward. Did anybody want to comment on that?
Yes, we
Go ahead.
we are only gonna list questions, but we're not going to list it. If somebody doesn't ask a question, all they're doing is making a speech. I don't think that we should be listing that. A question I agree with, but not speeches.
Okay. Anybody else want to comment to that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Barry?
I would agree with that. If there's questions, that's fair enough, but the one that isn't presently in the minutes of November 3rd is just someone's opinion. So we should just amend the minutes that it received this letter specifically under section 14.
Thanks, Trustee Barry. Anyone else?
Trustee Pachkowski here.
Go ahead.
So yeah, there was a question from the public. Now, we've since, because this process is new with us with regards to our live stream meetings, and really there was no fashion to ask questions in person. We're doing some work on our policy in that regard, but at that point in time, I mean, we hadn't done that, and so there was a question that came from the public. Now, whether that question should have been brought forward, because according to our bylaw, there are conditions that need to be met. So a person has to identify themselves by name and by physical address or address in the division. Those things, or both those things didn't occur. Or sorry, one of those things didn't occur. My mistake. And in saying that, it was a question and it was read at our public meeting. So because we live stream and record our meetings, there would be record of that comment or question or whatever we want to call it being read out anyhow. But I do agree that the verbatim should be removed from the minutes, and it should just be noted that we received a question from the individual, and then that there could be a link or that they can view the video if they wanted to see the question. And that's past practice again, and I will refer to our budget consultation meeting last December, where a number of people came forward and asked questions and had comments at that meeting. We noted who the questions came from, and then we stated that anybody who wanted to see those questions who wasn't at the meeting could view the recording from that meeting, which is on the website.
Thank you, Trustee Pachuski. Anyone else want to comment?
Russ, I would like to agree with Jarrett. I agree with everything you said, so I'll just leave it at that. But
thanks, Russ. Anyone else want to comment? Okay, so moving forward, I'll make sure that as to what we talked about with Jarrett about name and address, we'll also make sure that that I take a look at the questions and make sure the questions are in the minutes as what Scott's got up on here, certainly about being questions directed through the chair and going from there. So I'll make sure I go ahead and do that. So I'm going to leave the November 3rd, 2020 minutes until we adopt those, change those, and we'll table them so that I can work on with Stacy about those minutes and make sure I list the questions in there. And I'm going to stay quiet as long as everybody's okay with that. I'll table them and bring them back the next time we get together.
Can I just add a comment? It
Go
is
ahead, Diane.
We have the luxury of having our public meeting videotaped. We haven't always had that as a go-to for doing minutes. We have that luxury nowadays. But I also think that it's quite a task to expect anybody taking minutes to be able to record the questions that are asked by the public and make sure that they're all accurate. So I'm worried about saying that we have to include the questions in the minutes themselves. I think it's really important to just say the name of the person and that they acknowledge that they were part of the meeting, their name, whatever. But and if the item was attached, but I think it's quite something for someone to have to write down questions that somebody's asking. I think that's a big request for the minute taker.
Okay, well, I'll do some work on it with Stacy over the next little while, get some information out to the rest of the board and move on from there. And your point's well taken, Trustee Duma. Can we move on to the minutes of November the 17th? I'll just stay quiet as long as we're good, because we'll table the minutes of November 3rd. Okay, so let's move on. The minutes of November the 17th. Be resolved the board adopt the minutes of November the 17th. I need a mover and a seconder.
I'll move.
Moved by, Don. Thank you, Trustee Nickel. Seconded by
Trustee Rowland.
Trustee Rowland. Any comments to those minutes? Having none, we'll vote. So 7 in favor and 2 opposed. Thank you. It's passed. We're going to go on to the superintendent's report. Kathy, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you and good evening. I want to give an update on where we are at for our COVID response. And I'm going to start that by saying a gigantic thank you to each and every person who is in our system, because the people in Sunrise are getting it done. People are tossing new rules and new game plans at us, and folks are just rolling up their sleeves and getting things done for the well-being of all of the students in our division. So for that, I am truly grateful, and I am proud of each and every one of the staff members and also the families in Sunrise for just coming together and doing that. It makes the hard work a little bit more bearable. So I appreciate that a great deal, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Couple of things. Schools are still in orange, in the orange level here in Sunrise. So that means that we are still going on with in-class learning for everybody prior to Christmas. Communities are in critical red, and we heard in the press conference today that that's going to extend well into January for the communities. So we do need to follow those public health directives and do our best to try and keep our communities safe. We now have 9 positive COVID cases in 7 of our schools. We had some questions about how come there are only 7 letters on the website. So we have 7 public schools that have had, no, that's not true, 5 public schools that have had cases, and 2 colony schools who have had cases. And because our colony schools don't have any public access, we don't put those on the website because that is a compromise to someone's personal health information. So we don't do those as those are not considered public spaces that the general public is actually allowed to go onto at this point in time. Our schools remain locked. They each either have phone numbers or doorbells or ways that you can get into the school if you need to by phoning and making an appointment. One of the big things that the province of Manitoba announced was that they had 2 additional non-instructional days, and this past Monday, yesterday, was our second one. Staff in schools were very, very busy doing the planning for what would it look like if we went into critical red response. So right now, our schools are all prepared and set for a critical red response. It's meant that our teachers and our EAs and our principals and all of our staff at the schools have had to look at the guidelines for remote learning and what does that mean. Our schools also sent a letter home to folks outlining what critical red would look like. And that was really, really key, because if a school should go into critical red response, students who are at home would be getting exactly the same instruction that the students in school would be getting. And some of our families have thought, oh, well, great, I'm just going to flick the switch and my child's going to be in front of their teacher from 9 till 3:30, and that's not the case. Students of critical services workers who need to come to school, if we should happen to be in critical red, they're only coming to school if there are childcare arrangements that cannot be made. And those students who are in the school will be getting supervision and space. They won't be getting direct instruction from 9 o'clock until 3:30. They will be following the same guidelines or timelines for synchronous or direct instruction, as well as independent work, and contact time with the teacher. So what's happening at home for students will be mirrored in the school, not the reverse. And that's kind of what that letter talks about. It gives families an idea of what is the amount of time if you're in particular grades, what happens if you're in kindergarten, what happens if you're in K to 4, 5 to 8, or 9 to 12. What exactly does that remote learning look like? Again, it's on our website and it is also available on each of the schools' websites. Right now, none of our schools are in critical red. And even the period after Christmas break that the Minister of Education announced, that is a 2-week period where our grades 7 to 12 students will be going entirely remote, that's still not critical red. That's a different set of rules for those 2 weeks, and I'll get to that in a bit. There's also a critical red guidelines document the province has put out, so it kind of goes through exactly what I've just kind of covered. Again, a quick reminder and shout out that food donations for Christmas hampers or donations are not happening at the school level, but that doesn't mean that there's not still a need, and we need to connect up with our food banks and connect up to some of our community organizations and agencies to do what we can if we can. So please and thank you. Please be in touch in your community and see if there's something that you can do to help this holiday season. Again, on December 2nd, the Minister of Education made an announcement saying that they were going to make some changes after the holiday break. So students in kindergarten through grade 6 after our holiday break are going to continue to attend in class as normal. So from January 4th through to the 15th, those students will be coming back to school. Their return to school is January 4th. Students in grade 7 to 12 will participate in remote learning only. Again, some of our students in grade 7 to 12, if they are not able to be left at home unsupervised, they would have to contact the school and let the school know that, and we could try to make some accommodations for space and supervision, but they would still be doing remote learning in the school. There is a letter as well, so 2 letters went out on Friday, December 4th, one outlining the critical red guidelines, and the second was called holiday break information. And a couple of really key important pieces. First of all, on December 18th, this is now before the Christmas break, Sunrise school divisions have ended an hour early. So we do have early dismissal at 2:30 on December 18th. Then it goes into on December 4th, our K to 6s go to school as usual, and it gives parents an idea what would happen if you're have a K to 6 student and you want to keep them at home for that 2-week period. What do you need to do and how do you need to let the school know? It also identifies that grade 7 to 12 students are entirely in remote learning and that they would then be returning to school on January 18th, which I believe is Monday. There is a remote learning center, support center being developed and underway by the province, and we don't have any further details about that just yet, but the moment we have any, we would certainly share those with folks. If there are questions, I can certainly take some time to answer those.
Kath, that's a mouthful, and you know what? That's a lot of work that you guys are preparing for. So kudos to you and the staff for the work that you're doing and kind of rolling with the punches when the province throws those things out. So certainly thanks, Kath, for everything that you're doing. Anybody have questions for Kathy?
Well, yes, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Trustee Barry.
Can you hear me? I guess my question is, have the plexiglass barriers been installed, and what's the status of that? I believe there's supposed to be a report coming back to the board on that.
I could jump on that one, Kathy, if you want.
Great, thanks.
So we've assigned that to our maintenance department, Trustee Barry, and we find that our maintenance department doesn't do anything halfway. So they're looking at several different options in terms of the type of plexiglass. They've visited each and every secretarial office across the division. They're all structured a little bit differently. Obviously, there's not a whole lot of consistency in how they're laid out. So different measuring and different types of barriers. Some require just the front for students. Others, you have multiple staff members sitting in very close proximity, so we're looking at dividers across them. We expect to be installing as soon as next week, and once that's on the move, we'll definitely bring a report back to the board.
Thanks, Scott. Trustee Rowland?
I was just wondering if there's going to be any effect on bus drivers in the new year with the remote learning.
Yeah, great question. And the province has been really, really clear that this is a time-limited intervention or strategy. So it is just a 2-week period, and there will be no interruption to the busing as is. It would still be orange level, so same guidelines as we're following before, and there will not be any layoff of any employees. The province has been really, really clear with that piece.
Anyone else for Kathy?
I had a question, Paul. It's Russ. I can't see where my hand is, so I just have to cut
No
in.
worries, Russ. Go ahead.
Kathy, my understanding is that we have money from the province to hire teachers to come and teach our teachers the distance learning. Are we going to get some of those people in? Is there a plan of how they'll be distributed around the division, or?
Yeah, so we don't, I'll do two things. The province also announced on December 2nd that they were sharing with divisions the federal funding that has not been shared with divisions yet. That came out on Wednesday, and that is an in-camera item I think the board is discussing. The Provincial Resource Support Center is teachers that would potentially be helping out with some of the remote learning, but that center is not up or operational, and they haven't hired the teachers for that Provincial Resource Center as yet.
And to clarify, that's not, Kathy, Scott asked about, would we have teachers coming from the province to go ahead and help our teachers? It's not about them touring to come around to help. It would be a resource center that teachers can get help from. Is that fair?
Yeah, there's a repository of materials. So teachers can go to a repository of materials is what we're hearing, and gain access to resources or projects or, you know, items. The teachers that are hired for the resource center would actually be instructing students is what we're hearing, but we've not seen anything in terms of what it actually is. So there is, you know, a repository of materials, and there is supposed to be teachers that are going to be working directly with remote learning. They would liaise or talk with the classroom teacher to try to figure out how they would pick up the education and when a student might be coming back, but there are no teachers coming here from there.
Russ, to add further, and Kathy to add further, on my calls with board chairs that happen every second Tuesday, MSBA is saying is that those 100 teachers that they're looking for is that they were looking for retired teachers to go ahead and fill those 100 spots so that they weren't taking teachers away from schools.
Okay, well, yeah, the reason I was asking the question was that from what I've heard, there are some teachers who are very computer literate or whatever you want to say, and they're managing quite well, but there are some that are maybe not quite as well versed in computers, and they're having a bit of a stressful time, just wondering, I guess, what kind of job they're doing, or if they're doing it well, or just, I can imagine if I were there doing it, I'd be fumbling around and thinking, well, am I doing the right thing? And that type of thing. So I just thought they could use some kind of help maybe.
Yeah, so our program leader team has picked the ball up with that and is doing a ton of Office 365 training sessions. They are working with schools directly. They are offering sessions throughout the school week. They're going side by side with teachers and working with them on that technology. So we're managing that really, really well in-house. Having some other divisions come asking us for some help with it.
Is that good, Russ?
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, I just have one follow-up question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Trustee Barry.
You may have covered this, and I apologize if you did in the past, but I'm just going to ask, as the province always wants to encourage as much as the staff, if they can, from working from home. Do we have any staff presently, and can they work from home? I'm thinking of some of our business center and the center on 2nd Street.
No, so everybody in the K-12 education system has been deemed critical services workers and are still reporting to work. So that is something that we've surveyed other divisions around the province, and everybody in the K-12 is one of those industries, or like healthcare, where everybody comes to work.
So could I, Pat Pachkowski here, could I just chime in on that one?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Without disclosing, I'm also employed with a critical services department, and we have some administrative support staff that are working remotely. So if we have, I think where Mr. Barry's going with that, and I sort of agree. I you know, it's actually a really good question. Is if we have folks who could potentially be doing their work remotely from home, I would hope that we're taking that opportunity to do that, and if not, I don't understand why.
Thanks, Jared. Any other comments? Well, Kath, too, I did have an inquiry as well from one of our staff members, and I asked the staff members to go back to their supervisors, and they asked. The fact is that if we're not in a school and Dr. Roosin talks about us trying to stay home as much as possible, could they work from home? So I'm just giving you. It sounds like people have been reaching out to different trustees. I've certainly given the response back to them is that they need to go ahead and talk to their supervisors. But it sounds like people are wondering with that question. So I think that that's some of the feedback, I guess, that we've heard 3 trustees talk about. Certainly from there. Anyone else want to make comment? Any other questions for Kathy? Okay, hearing none. Thanks, Kathy. Scott, Secretary Treasurer report.
Thanks, Paul. So I'll zip through this fairly quickly. A couple of interesting things dealing with transportation. Our transportation manager is requesting an audience, and I think it's about time that he come present at the board. So our intention is for the delegation on January the 5th. We'll have Jason come and speak to you all, particularly relevant right now, given that it's budget season, to talk a bit about his equipment and what he thinks his needs may be. So I'll work with that on him. Kind of a neat thing I've included here. We've been challenged a little bit in this pandemic environment and coming up with professional development for staff, particularly when we can't get everybody together in one room. So the staff of transportation took the initiative and started building some of these little videos for bus drivers to watch in terms of things to check on your bus. And so these are internally created with our staff. Have a look at your leisure, and I thought they did a great job with it. So these are the types of things we'll present to our drivers when we have a professional development day. Maintenance, we were going to talk a bit about this in camera. Unfortunately, didn't quite get to it, but we can talk some more. The Public Schools Finance Board has approved what was our #1 priority project on our 5-year capital plan, which is the renewal of the roof and exterior wall of the 1960 wing of Springfield Collegiate Institute. So that's going to start rolling on very shortly. Hoping to get some final feedback on the study that's going on the HVAC daycare HVAC system soon. ICT cord's been flat out. I thank Trustee Reed for giving me some feedback today on Lactabani, but all our schools are preparing for the possibility of remote learning, and in some cases, we have a very robust internet system. We have good equipment. Unfortunately, those teachers who are teaching right now without a laptop, who have a desktop computer, generally speaking, those don't come with things like cameras and microphones and speakers and things like that. So Gordon and his team are really scrambling to make sure everybody has the peripherals that they need, which is a big job in the case we may go to more remote learning. Finance, we're working on the copier replacement that this board approved several meetings ago. And one big one that's kind of new is this is the end of a 5-year contract with our current auditors. We will be going to a proposal process. It's been advertised and we'll move forward. Obviously, any bid will be brought back to the board for review and approval. And I've also included, I won't go through, but I've included that document for your review, just so that you know what we've included in the proposal process.
Thanks, Scott. Any questions for Scott? Hearing none, Scott, let's move on. Thank you. So, Scott, board business, we got COVID costs. So you want to take us through that very quickly?
Yeah, so the Safe Schools report that I am required to do monthly, I have not actually submitted this to the province yet. The last couple of calls with the province, they've alluded to the fact that there's a new template coming out. So I'm kind of waiting till the last minute. I believe it's due 10 working days after month end. So I think that gives me until next Tuesday or Wednesday. So, but this was a reflection of our actual costs incurred to date. The interesting piece, I guess, is in sort of the report that I've written up, and I want to be clear about this. So during November, we incurred another almost $135,000 in costs, bringing us up to about $533,000. Our projections stay pretty static. I think we're about $15,000 different than last month. I can't anticipate everything that all the schools are going to buy, and we use average costs on some of the teachers that we've hired. So, I think that's pretty good projection. So we are projecting another 1.8 million in costs. So at this point in time, if you look at the table at the bottom, I think this is where we focus. We have projected costs of about $2.4 million. We have savings for things that we are likely not to incur this year, and again, that's things like professional development and travel and field trips and sports trips and things like that. We are expected to redirect our savings from last year to those costs, 1.6 million. Between the two funding announcements, which occurred by the province on the 18th of September and the 2nd of December, we have about another 1.72 million. So we have $3.4 million in resources that we are expected to allocate towards these costs. And right now we're looking at $2.1 million in expected costs. Now, I don't want to, again, I don't want to term it in such a way that we're running a surplus. We're not really running a surplus. We know we could use and need some resources in our schools in this pandemic time. So the way I'm presenting this is just to keep the board apprised of where we stand with regard to the funding and our projected costs.
Thanks very much, Scott. Any questions for him? Any COVID questions? Scott, this is exactly what we've been asking for, so thanks for putting that together and keeping us abreast of where we stand. We appreciate it. Questions for Scott? Okay, hearing none. You've got public budget input information. Do you want to talk about that, Scott?
Yeah, we'll just say that that's really more or less a placeholder for. We were looking to get some written feedback to the budget as well. There's nothing really to speak on that, Paul. It's just a placeholder on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Scott, we've got line of credit. Do you want to take us through that, please?
Yeah, so this is again, we've traditionally had two lines of credit. We have an operating line of credit, and just to sort of refresh the memory of the trustees. Really, our use for the line of credit is due to the fact that we don't generally, our fiscal year starts in July. We start spending money in mostly in September as we come back to school and our staff is hired. We don't generally collect on municipal tax revenues until November, December, even into January, February. So we run into a cash shortfall, and that's the reason for having a line of credit. I want to point out that this is not any change. This is the same status of the line of credit that we've had historically. It's simply that Sonova Credit Union does ask that we pass a borrowing bylaw on an annual basis to refresh that bylaw.
Thanks, Scott. So be it resolved that the board approve the first reading of the borrowing bylaw 373-20 for $27,500,000 as outlined. I need a mover and a seconder.
Pachkowski moves.
Moved by Trustee Pachkowski, second by Trustee Rowland. Any questions to this? Hearing none, we'll vote. We're just waiting on Trustee Barry. So it passed 8 in favor, 1 opposed. Thank you. Thank you for that. Proposed subdivision RM of Lactabani. I'm sure that that's there for information. Is there anything that you wanted to add to that, Scott?
Not particularly. Stacy has prepared our standard response. That is, that we ask that they follow Section 43(1), I believe it is, of the Public Schools Act, and set aside land or cash in lieu of land equal to 10% of the property value. So that's generally what we do. Stacy has attached also the draft letters if the board wants to have a quick read through on those, and we can get them out as soon as the board approves.
Any questions for Scott? The subdivision of Lactabani, 8.4.
I have a question just in regards to the letter, though. I think I tried to take the time to read through the land planning document, but I thought there was something in there that was also in regards to sidewalks or pathways, not just buses. Because sometimes we talk about helping to create subdivisions that create a walking path so you actually don't need a bus. And so that in part of that letter where we say 10% also bus path, recognize that we want to have roads wide enough to pass buses through, but sometimes it's also about saying, could you also make sure there's some space available in case you want to have some paths? And I thought there was something in the Land Planning Act that would give you permission to make that as a request in your letter, but I couldn't find it. So I just wanted to throw it out there, and I can try to find it, but I thought there was something in there that you could also add that request into.
I'll have a look again as well, Dan. I'm not 100% familiar with that.
Thank you, Trustee Duma. Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on. Proposed subdivision of RM of Brokenhead. Scott, that's for information for us. Is there any quick comment?
Similar comment. There's a draft letter there as well.
Any questions on that draft letter? Anybody for Scott about the RM subdivision of RM of Brokenhead? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. 8.6 talks about us revisiting the process for public at meetings. So just a refresher to trustees. Kathy reminded us that way back when we said that we were going to go and not have the public at our meetings because of COVID, we said that we would revisit it in December. I'm suggesting that because of where we are right now, we add another time frame to it, and then we come back and revisit it. And Kathy, what did we say that we were going to look to revisit it when?
I think that we were having a chat around spring break as the next sort of natural break, but that's entirely up to the board to decide. I don't have a prediction as to when this will end.
Right. So my suggestion is about revisiting for the process for public to be at meetings. Of course, if everything works great and there's a lightning bolt that comes down and in February everybody is fine, certainly we can go ahead and bring everyone back. But I'm suggesting that we look at it just before spring break about revisiting the process for public at meetings. Is there any difficulty from any trustee about that?
Well, I guess, Mr. Chairman, should we put a specific date? Like, would that be roughly April 1 of next year? I don't have the calendar in front of me.
Should we make a motion?
Break. Did we have a motion for it last time, Kathy? Do you remember, did we have a motion that we had to put this together through Kathy?
Sorry, you're breaking up there, Paul. Could you repeat that?
Did we have a motion about when we revisited, or was it an action?
That's an excellent question. I cannot remember, but I can go back and look. I did just quickly look at the calendar. So your first board meeting in April is April 6th.
So what's our meeting just before spring break, Kathy?
That would be March 16th.
So I'm suggesting that we do it on March the 16th, revisit it. And maybe it's a good idea that we do put it into a motion So I'll put the motion together. Is that on March at the public budget at the meeting at the trustee meeting on March the 16th, we'll revisit public ad meetings. I need a mover in it, so I'll move it. I need a seconder.
Petrikowski will second.
Seconded by trustee. Okay.
You want me to put a motion together, Paul?
I think we just did a rough one.
Okay.
Any comment to that motion? So Stacy, do we have to vote by hand?
Yes, that's what I have in my hand. Sorry. Yeah,
okay.
My hand.
So I'm going to go round table. Trustee Barry, are we good with the 16th?
Yeah, that's good.
Trustee Reed?
Yes, that's good.
Trustee Rowland?
Yes, yes.
Trustee Nickel?
Yes.
Trustee Harris?
Robin, was that?
Yes, Trustee Harris?
Yes.
Robin?
Yes.
Trustee Paczewski?
Yes.
Trustee Inslee?
Yep.
Trustee Duma?
Yes, but I don't like the motion. It's not clear enough.
Okay, well, the motion passed, and we're going to revisit the public ed meetings on the 16th of March. Okay, so let's move forward. School and operational presentation motion. Be it resolved that the board replace the board meeting presentation portion of their schedule at the approved on June the 16th through motion number 1920-6-160168 with the schedule as presented on December the 8th. I need a mover.
Petrikowski.
Moved by trustee Paczewski, seconded by trustee Rowland. Questions to this? Hearing no questions, we'll vote. So it passed 9-0. Thank you. Follow up with MAPSI. So trustees would have seen the email that I sent. So one of the tasks that you gave me was to contact MAPSI. So I sent you correspondence with email through them with regard to where MAPSI was. And so they are looking at reinstating us to back into getting it back involved with MAPSI. Any questions or information from about MAPSI?
Question from trustee Duma. I don't know that it was a question about reinstating MAPSI. It was a question about what happened to MAPSI's marketing, because they used to send emails to all letters to all school divisions asking for membership dues. And that was the original question. And the Sunrise School Division didn't necessarily launch on a school division-wide membership. We left it up to the parent councils at the schools. And we looked at possibly supporting those costs for the membership, but it wasn't a division-wide membership, and that's not necessarily what was being asked for. It was simply what happened to the letter that they send to school divisions annually, and did we ever get one? And it would be nice to just kind of connect with MAPSI to find out what they're doing. But I'm not,
So,
that was the original question, because we usually get something from them.
So when I reached out to MAPSI, you saw the email and I sent it out to you. So they did say that they weren't connected with Sunrise. And in the email back, they said that we're very happy that Sunrise Division will be reconnecting with MAPSI. Please see the attached registration form. So what they do is that my understanding is that if we were not registered with them, they did not send information out to us. That's what I got from my telephone call. and you'll see that it's talk Maria Fernandez or Brenda to give them a call back. So that's what that they mentioned to me. So then that's what I just shared with everybody.
So when they send an information package, can it come directly to the board so we can see it?
So what I was expecting is that it would come to the board and I would share that with all of you. Yes. Stacy would get the information to me and it would go out to everybody.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions about MAPC? Okay, thank you. Remote learning, Trustee Nicol.
All right, when asked to be put on, there was some information that I wasn't aware of, and with what the province did, they did some changing. So some of the questions I won't have now because the province have already said there will be remote learning from in the 2 weeks in January. But my question is, the students know how to get onto remote learning with a teacher, but this is probably for Kathy. If a student wants to talk to 3 other students in the classroom, do they know how to institute the Teams meeting on their own?
Yeah, so we've had some students who've been practicing and they make calls on their own, like they can do a student-to-student call within their classroom or set up, it's called a channel where they can do group work.
Okay, that's one thing which is good to hear. The other thing is that you said that we're having problems with getting substitute teachers. From what I understand from talking to some retired teachers, they said they would be interested in subbing, but they would like to sub remotely. That's just a thought. Is that possible? Is the technology available that we could do that? Or if I know that Gordon's not on here, so maybe that's something that we can find out at the next meeting. In other words, if we can't get anybody in the classroom, somebody remotely is probably better than nobody. So, and the reason that they are on the sub list, or they were on the sub list last year, but because of their age, they don't want to go into the school, but is quite willing to help the students remotely.
Yeah, so the issue with that is then you need to have 2 people in because you still would need a supervisor for the kids in the classroom. So if the teacher's remoting in to do the education piece, there still needs to be another adult body who is supervising the children. I'd like to think that someone on the screen would do it, but I've been teaching for a long time and I don't think that would work.
John, you're going back to the colony when the colony schools did ATV. And we taught that way.
Yes, and what I'm saying is, though, I know it's going to cost a little bit more money, but if somebody comes there that has, and which we can get, with this, I forget now what it's called, a permanent teaching certificate that allows you to go and teach, but that means you don't have to have any teaching ability. You can go in there and supervise, but you can't really teach. So I think it would be better to have, even if we have to have an adult there to supervise to make sure that everybody is keeping quiet, but at least we have a teacher that is teaching that class. So there will be some learning going on. Well, we'll put it this way, more learning going on than if there was just a substitute teacher that wasn't a teacher.
Yeah, so
I know it costs
the other thing I wanted to say was that, and I almost don't want to say this out loud, our itinerant substitutes are doing the trick right now. And I don't want to say that out loud, but we seem to be in a steady place right now. Steadier. Oh, someone's going to probably yell at me tomorrow for saying that out loud.
Okay, this was just a thought in case that we ran into difficulty of not having enough subs.
Thanks. Anything else that you wanted to add, Don?
No, because the government has made remote learning and they're doing the resource center, so they more or less answer some of the questions that I wanted to have answered.
Okay. And again, we're still having some conversations about remote learning, and we'll probably have some discussion later on in the meeting about that. Thank you. Let's go to committees. Policy Committee update, Chair Harris, floor is yours.
Policy Committee is meeting in 2 days from now. We'll have a report at our next meeting.
So do you have, is this policy a motion to amend policy number 13? Is that from you?
So, right, that next item 812. In our regular review of policy 13, the Policy Committee is recommending a couple of minor tweaks to the policy to better clarify the programs offered by Sunrise School Division. You see them highlighted in the document provided.
Okay, so let me get it on the table then, Trustee Harris. Be resolved, the board amend policy 13 to include an additional bullet point in the preamble, which reads English program from the kindergarten to grade 12, and which adds the word program after French immersion in the second bullet of the preamble. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Trustee Harris.
Trustee Harris.
Seconded by Trustee Rowland. Thank you. Any questions to this? Any more comments, Trustee Harris?
None.
Okay, hearing none, we'll vote.
I have a question, a comment.
Go ahead, Trustee Duma.
What happened to our music and physical education programming and things like Art Speak? Like, where does that have a place in this?
I will let Kathy respond to that.
Yeah, and again, I'm not sure that it does in your policy, and if that was something you wanted to refer to the policy committee, you probably should. We do have some procedures around arts programming and phys ed programming and those kinds of things. I also think that some of your strategic planning might point in that direction. But this was the document that is in place and talks about the required programming that needs to be there.
So I guess that's where I'm confused by that, because Ukrainian heritage language programming is not a requirement. So we've kind of made the statement in there that the division is committed to additional programming, including the following. So English program from kindergarten to grade 12 is not an additional, it's not additional programming. It is mandatory. French immersion programming is additional. So I just find that the context of it, it doesn't match whether it's truly additional programming or not. But if we're going to go to the place of additional programming, then the things that we have often liked to highlight in Sunrise School Division is definitely the music program. It's been well highlighted, but there's no mention of it here. And then the other parts are the art stuff. So I'm just a bit not sure about what this is about.
Can I speak to that?
Go ahead, Don.
Well, first of all, we only really have to have programs from grade 1 to grade 12. So kindergarten is additional programming. So that's how when we were talking about in the policy committee, that's why we put down the English program from kindergarten to grade 12 to indicate that we're doing in kindergarten because it's not compulsory according to the Public School Act. And it was the English program that would include small things like art speak and the music program, but that's within the program, the English program. Then there's a French program from kindergarten to grade 12, and the Ukrainian program from kindergarten to grade 12, because kindergarten is not compulsory, so we wanted to put that in there. So I think that the way it's read, that it does include Art Speak, because it's not really, Art Speak's not really a program per se, it's part of a program.
Anyone else want to comment? So Kathy, I do believe that the Public Schools Act does say that there are 4 programs that are compulsory: the English program, the French immersion program, the Francais program, and then the vocational program. Those are the 4 programs that are compulsory. Ukrainian heritage is not a compulsory program. We are putting it in here, though, is that the division is committed to English, French immersion, Ukrainian. I think what Diane is talking about is in the English program, is it something that we want to list that we're committed to music or whatever, or would that be somewhere else, Kath?
Again, this is a board policy, so it's not a Kathy policy. We looked at what the board policy was, and the policy committee wanted to make those changes. a commitment to anything else would be something that the board would have to decide.
So I think that
add that, yeah.
Fair enough, Kath. So Trustee Harris, I think that one of the things that Diane Duma has brought in front of us, and I think Dawn, you're talking about, is what are some of the, if we put this in policy, what are some of the other programs? And I know, Dawn, you're saying that music is part of the English program, and I guess talent development is part of the English program. But would we want to say that into our policy, that we're committed to, besides Ukrainian heritage, that isn't compulsory, that we're committed to having programs like music and Ukrainian and talent development? And I'm not sure if I'm missing any others, but would we want to go ahead and say that? And so I think that that's what we've done in the past, and I think that that's what Diane Duma is bringing up. Is that what I'm hearing you say, Diane Duma?
Yeah, I think it doesn't sync with me, the statement at the top, with what's included in the points. And then it seems to me like if Sunrise School Division wants to make a statement to the public about what we do in our learning environment, programs and services, that we can't exclude things like the music program. So I just I don't know how to word it in there, but I think there's something that could be added to it, and maybe some tweaking to how it's laid out in the language. So I'm not sure.
I don't think that there's anything wrong with us adding bullets in there, if that's what we're committed to. For us saying is that, of course, we're committed to English and French immersion and Ukrainian and student services, but we're also committed to music, and we've also been committed to talent development, and we've also been, I think that's not a bad idea for us to add that in. I'm not so sure that, go ahead, Don.
But the trouble, if you start adding those in, then are we committed to the marine biology program in Springfield? Are we committed to the phys ed program in Whitemouth? Are we committed to the outdoor program in another school? We'll have 200. To me, it's the English program that includes everything, because the English program includes music. It is a compulsory part of the English program. So I don't know why we say that if I say I'm committed to the English program, music is a compulsory part of that. Talent development is something added on. So does that mean that we're going to be committed to a chess because a school is doing chess? We committed to chess. We still committed to checkers. I think. No, but we have those.
Don, but we have divisional programs, and so do you know what? Music and band is divisional. Talent development is divisional. The individual programs that are running at schools are not divisional. So, for instance, we're committed to above and beyond the English program and the French immersion program. We're committed to a band program. That's not a music is compulsory, but a band is not. We're committed to, I think that's what Diane is talking about. What are the divisional programs that we're committed to? So maybe I'm suggesting is that the policy committee take a look at this, because if we're turning around and saying that the division is committed to the additional programming, including, I would say that we would want to go ahead and say what are the divisional programs that we're committed to. The marine biology program, which is a great program at SEI, is a school program. I think schools will have their own individual programs, but what are we committed to as a division? And then I think that as we say, when we're committed to something as a division, we fund it as a division.
Can I make a suggestion?
So, go ahead.
This is also a policy that we've brought and reviewed 3 times as a policy committee, because it comes up every year. We have a rotation for looking at each policy once per year. And it sounds like there's a lot of discussion and a lot of valuable points. So there are 4 policy committee members who could hear those valid and valuable points without having to leave this in limbo.
Point of order anyways, there's a question on the table and I move to call the question.
So be it resolved that we amend the policy number 13 to include the blueprint. So yes. Okay.
Well, the question's on the table, and there's some trustees that have shared their questions and concerns, and we've all heard them. And now we have to, I move to call the question.
Okay. Let's call the question. Go ahead, Stace.
Well, just to do a point of order, that no one can stop debate unless it's agreed to by the board, because you can't stop debate. You could stop someone from debating 5 times, but you can't stop debate of the board. So there actually is, calling the question is kind of actually not allowed. But the piece here is, so it has to be, as everybody has spoken to the motion, then you can sit there and say, okay, you've all spoken, now let's deal with the question at hand. My question is, if you agree to this amendment and you'll go ahead with the amendments that are requested by the policy committee, can you then at another time do further amendments to the policy? Because we're only approving the amendments, we're not approving the policy. So can it still come up at another time to actually approve the policy itself?
I believe so. I think that we can continue to go back and revisit policies. We're adding a few words to these policies, and can we go ahead and change these policies? Yes, I do believe we can. Trustee Rowland?
I'm okay in supporting the motion as it is. I feel like the descriptions, like Dawn has mentioned and Robin, that these are broad, like macro type language here. When you're talking about English programming, French immersion, or Ukrainian, these are broad stated language in describing how a program and how education is conducted. It doesn't exactly address every part of what is presented to a child in a classroom, whether it's music, art, any skills that are presented. It's just talking about the programming, the means of providing an education, whether it's English, French, Ukrainian. So I'm okay with that wording. I think that those are the criteria that we enroll children in our schools, and I'm good with that.
Oh, thank you. Anybody else want to talk to it that hasn't had a chance? Okay, I'll call the question. We'll vote. So there's 6 in favor and there's 3 opposed, and so it carried. Thank you. Thanks, Robin, for the work that you guys are doing with the policy committee. Finance committee, Trustee Rowland.
Nothing exceptional to report. I believe Scott has some stuff for us to review and approve, but all things seem fine and nothing exceptional to report.
Okay, and Diane, you're signing authority for the month of December?
Correct, thank you.
So 813 is a check register. Be it resolved, the board received the October 2020 check register with a total amount of checks issued at $3,747,595.41, reviewed on November 19th by the Finance Committee as submitted. I need a mover. Moved by Trustee Rowland, seconded by?
Pachkowski.
Pachkowski. Any questions to this? Hearing none, we'll vote. So 8 in favor, 1 opposed. It passed. Thank you. Professional development, professional reports. You have some information about capsule and the MSB regional meetings that we had. 10.1 is the financial monitoring report. It's an action item. Be it resolved, the board adopt the financial monitoring report for the month end of October 31st, reviewed by the Finance Committee on November the 19th. I need a mover. Moved by trustee
Paczkowski.
Paczkowski, seconded by trustee Rowland. Any questions to this? Hearing none, we'll vote. And it passed 8-1. Thank you. Board correspondence, you have information that's there.
Paul?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you went over the capsule when, and I was supposed to, I thought I was going to report verbally. If you want a written report, I can have a written report for next meeting if that's what the trustees want.
You know what, Don, give us 2 minutes of a verbal report. And you're right, you were supposed to talk about it.
Yeah, so what it was a 1-hour seminar, and I thought it was very useful. Now, there was some lawyers that were talking, but you remember what lawyers are. Sometimes that their opinion may not be, and what happens in Ontario may not is happening in Manitoba. But one of the things they actually really stressed is that some of the things that we're requiring teachers to do and EAs to do, that it probably doesn't fall into a mandate. And if the teachers were more, use the word militant, that we might have a problem with it. But when I looked at the memorandum of understanding, which I thought was very good, that kind of said some of the addressed some of the questions that some of the lawyers had. But unfortunately, I thought they were going to put up on the CAPSA website the webinar. I checked today and I could not find it yet, so I'm going to check that out to see whether it is on the website, because it was a very interesting 1-hour session. I think that Russ was attended. I'm not quite sure who else attended, but it was quite interesting to listen to. And it was also interesting to listen to that all the provinces in Canada were dealing with the same problems that we have doing in Sunrise, such as shows of substitute teachers and probably lack of funding from the provincial governments. And that's, unless there's any other questions, that's probably my report.
Thanks, Don. Any questions for Don?
Paul?
Go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, I attended that as well. I have 3 pages of notes, so I think what I would do, maybe I'll prepare a report for the next staff meeting. I mean, I could read these out, but I don't think anybody wants to hear them. So,
okay, if you put something in writing for us, Russ, we'll appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
Any questions for Don? And thanks, Don, for reminding me for you to do that. Thanks. So board correspondence is 11.